So I want to ask you something here on the economics question because this struck me when you appeared on the Tucker Carlson show. You talked about this a little bit. This is from the press packet that you sent us in preparation for this interview. We are our own liberators. We can't be bought. The African People's Socialist Party has maintained economic self-sufficiency throughout its existence, ensuring that its political agenda serves the interest of its self-defined program for African liberation and is not dictated by any external force. Okay, so that goes on. But in the interview with Tucker that I saw you on, you spoke about economic empowerment and economic self-determination. And I noticed a very stark contrast between, your vision of a people's economic movement, socialism, and the sort of liberal nanny state that you seem to speak against in that interview. I feel like socialism, as defined under neoliberalism, can only take the form of a welfare state, which you argue, as I understood it in that interview, to be disempowering. Whereas you and your organization advocate for self-sufficiency, self-determination. So can you speak a little bit as to how you and your organization have put that in action over the years? Here's another photo that you guys sent us, the Uhuru Bakery and Cafe. I assume this is either from your bookstore or your graphic design shop. I know you guys had both.
This was our bakery. This was our bakery.
Oh, this was the bakery. That was in the bakery. Okay.
Oakland, Uhuru Bakery Cafe in Oakland, California.
Got it. And here's the newspaper,
this was
Burning Spear.
Photo typesetting outfit. This was in San Francisco. So we established these economic entities with the objective is to get resources that we can use to develop economic projects. And that bakery that you showed, it was there for about 3 or 4 years until the U.S. invasion of Panama. And with the U.S. invasion of Panama, we organized from that space. We organized a protest in Oakland. I think it was at a Marine recruiting station. And we marched from there and went to the Marine recruiting station. And that night, the bakery caught fire. But it wasn't too bad. We said it'll be okay because we can repair this in a week or so. And then later that night, it caught fire again. This is after the fire department had come put the thing out. So this is a real serious issue, economic self-reliance, because the state and sectors of the rulers in this country would prefer for African people to be in a state of welfare slavery forever, that we can't take care of ourselves. There's a whole industry. Mobs of people are attached to these programs that's supposedly serving Black people. You can get welfare if there's no man in the house. You can get these kinds of resources, destroying our families and supposedly doing us a favor by doing this, and they keep us locked into it. So we've got all kinds of liberals, all sectors of the Democratic Party, et cetera. Many of them are connected to these programs that keep African people in a state of servitude because to become self-determining or self-reliant goes against their interests and certainly goes against the interests of Black people as well. So that's part of what it is that we're fighting against. And that's part of what it is that they would attack us. I mean, we have something like 52 economic entities that we've created over the years in North St. Louis. This is an invitation. I want to make it to you and to all of your listeners. Come to North St. Louis because you have to see it. If you see it, then you understand why we are under assault here. We've transformed North St. Louis. You see desolate areas. You've seen pictures they like to show of Ukraine bombed out. Well, that's what North St. Louis looks like, generally speaking, without a single bomb having been dropped here. And we have organized and pulled people into a process that we've torn down buildings that were in states of disrepair. They couldn't be fixed, and we've rebuilt them. We brought businesses to this community, et cetera, so that people can live and can have agency. And that's what the whole thing is, for African people to exert our own agency. And that's why this notion of somehow the Russians, we work for the Russians. This is the most ridiculous thing. It should be ridiculous, but I think that because of how they have crippled African people and the whole struggle for self-determination, many people probably do believe that Africans do not have the wherewithal to take care of ourselves, and therefore there must be somebody, especially somebody white, that's telling us what to do all the time. In this case, the Russians Of course, they've used the Russian thing for a long time against us. Yeah.
See, now the very fact that your group exists and is so invisibilized demonstrates to me the Powell memo succeeded, right? Now, for anyone who doesn't know, this was a very famous memo written by a former Supreme Court justice advocating for corporations to basically take over the media. And as a result of that, they run this very elaborate kind of controlled opposition narrative so that the ideas that you're presenting are coded as Black conservative ideas. And those are the only people who are allowed to express them. But their solution is very different. It's Herman Cain. You start Godfather Pizza. It's not anything to do with the community, and certainly not anything to do with leftism. If you look at the overall narrative about these 60s and 70s radical movements, it's that they failed, they collapsed under the weight of their own contradictions, they were violent, they were subject to being run by charismatic narcissists, they were dangerous. You see these movies where they represent those groups. That's always the story, right? Some naive protagonist winds up finding out they're going to blow up all these people, and it's really not what they thought it was. And yet, here's a group like yours that's been chugging along for all these years, actually doing what these Black conservatives say. And as a result of the fact that voices like yours are suppressed, and the only people that you hear saying welfare is actually bad for the community are right-wingers. As a result, as soon as people on the left hear you speak out against welfare, as I have, because I was raised on it,
Right.
and I know personally
Right.
that a lot of the problems that people describe with it, I lived it.
Right.
It's real, man. It's not good for you not to see anybody go to work.
Right.
How you going to grow up to take care of yourself? It makes
Well,
it
Omali, you just
much
mentioned
harder.
they don't let you have a man in the house. Russell has said the same thing
Yeah.
about his
Yeah,
life.
yeah. My mother didn't get remarried after she got divorced because she was afraid they were going to take away the welfare.
Yeah. The state becomes the husband.
Right.
So and, yeah.
No. So I really want to hear your thoughts about that. Left people reflexively, as soon as you attack welfare, they think you're a right winger.
Yes.
So why don't they allow people who represent the left to talk about this?
Well, one of the biggest contradictions we have with what's traditionally characterized as the left in this country, and this is not new. We've had to fight them in the 1960s as well. Because the whole notion of African people being self-determining. In fact, the leftists were more effective in arguing against us because they brought what was characterized as science to the discussion, where you had others who were rabble-rousing and who were obviously, like right-wingers and clanners and this kind of thing. But here are the leftists. These are the white people who love us, right? And so they come with a much more sophisticated argument against African people being self-reliant. And somehow for us to be self-reliant is to be splitting the working class, the multinational working class. We're causing a split with the working class because we're talking about African people being self-governing, self-reliant, being able to take care of ourselves in the struggle against what we characterize as colonial domination. And what's really overlooked is, and people, involved in such a subjective kind of politics. This is what they've dumbed the people down so that you don't recognize objective kinds of contradictions. We say Black power, and somebody say, well, what about the white people? We didn't say anything about white people. They just want to be in control of our own lives. It's not a statement, against white people. It's Black people having to have our own existence, being capable of ourselves. And once you say Black power, then they say, well, you are like apartheid. You're for apartheid. You're for segregation. I'm not for segregation. I'm for self-determination, because the ones who put us in a situation of segregation or integration is the one who's in control. People have to have the ability to make their own determinations about what the future is going to look like. I'm not a segregationist. I'm a liberationist. I'm for us being able to make choices about the fact that our children will have a life, not because a good white man or a good Negro says that they can have a decent life, because the power to make that happen is in the hands of Black people ourselves. That's what it's all about. And that's the thing that cannot be tolerated.
Yeah, no, I think that's extremely well said. And like I said earlier, I think the reason why a lot of this talk about welfare, slavery, and the welfare state gets categorized as right wing is because I think under capitalism, it's really impossible to empower workers, right? Like that's impossible under capitalism. So any left that exists under capitalism takes the form of this sort of nanny state liberalism, right? Because that's the only left that is doable under this system. You have to overthrow capitalism before you get to true worker empowerment on a sort of broad basis. Do you have any?
Well, and you could argue that that's why all of these projects fail, because they don't want to fund projects that succeed, such as yours.
But the thing is that ours is a working class movement.
Right.
We're a Black working class movement. And many of those who characterize themselves as left in the African community, so-called progressive, they are not. They're opposed to that. They can't even perceive of the Black workers having power over our own lives and power over them. So there's a certain kind of arrogance that's associated with their presumption of who they are. And they have this marriage with the system. They protect the system as it is, and they protect themselves within the system by being obviously opposed to what it is that we stand for and what we try to promote. And we do it concretely. And that's why I'm asking people, don't just take our word for it. We say it's not what we say, it's what we do. And you can actually see transformation, places where we go, where we work, etc., where there's nothing in the African community, we put it there. And we brought the people into political life and economic activity. We've now the St. Louis, the North St. Louis, where we are, was completely desolate. And the whole corridor, we've transformed it. People are now moving back to the community. People are repairing their own businesses and things like that as a consequence of the activity we're involved in. And people are celebrating us. These are people, not the politicians. Not the politician. There was a politician, a Black politician, an office holder here, who's in prison right now, by the way, but who actually called for sending the National Guard into this place that we are developing, because they said the crime is so bad among Black people, send in the National Guard. This was a Black man who was an office holder. And so what we did, we changed the conditions on the ground. And the things that he was describing as a problem, they don't exist like that anymore, precisely because of development, that people have the ability to see a future, which is something that was difficult, if not impossible, before. So that's who we are. And we believe that we can change the material reality and bring people into the process of changing their reality. And in the process of changing the reality, the people themselves become changed. And this is what it is that we believe and how we function for the last 50 or more years. And this is the thing that makes us a problem.
Please clap.